You're listening to the Woman of Value podcast. You are about to hear the story of a woman who is following her dreams and passions and creating positive change in the world.
What if it were true that my vulnerability is a source of my power, and that sharing my story with others and being totally transparent about my past could be, instead of something that would make me feel powerless and weak, something that would be my greatest strength?
A Latina filmmaker and cultural storyteller, Denise Soler Cox is dedicated to helping individuals, organizations, and companies transform how we experience culture, identity, and belonging. Her work with Project Enye has been featured on Forbes, CNN, NBC Latino, Telemundo, Univision, Fox News Latino, and much more. And she's a friend of mine too. So welcome to the show, Denise.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I am excited that you said yes to this interview, because I remember we were just talking about how we met at a public speaking conference and you were right on the cusp of doing Project Enye. Mm-hmm. So let's dive right into this aha moment that had you stepping into this amazing, amazing place.
Yeah, so I had an aha moment that actually happened when I was 26 years old. And it was such an incredible, it was like, it never happened before, and it hasn't happened since. It was like this incredible moment of clarity for me that I knew that I needed to make a movie, which is odd because I have no formal training making films. I didn't at the time know anyone who had made a film. And that was like 22 years ago, actually. And so even though I had this idea, and it was really all I ever wanted to do, like if time and money wasn't an issue, like I always said, I want to make this documentary. I want to heal hearts and minds. I want to make sure people know they're not alone. I grappled so much with my own enoughness, is what I say. I didn't feel like I was Latina enough to make it. I didn't feel like obviously had enough training, had zero training. And I let that hold me back for 17 years until one day I said, you know what, enough is enough. I'm actually going to make this movie come hell or high water. And I figured out how to do it. I partnered with an Oscar-nominated producer and we got it done. And that was several years ago. And I've been on the road now with the film for 3 years.
That idea of not enoughness is so prevalent. And so many people get held back from their big dream by not believing that they have enough experience, that they're not smart enough, experienced enough, good enough. And so what happened that made you finally take that leap?
Yeah, so for me, I just felt like I was one of those people that if someone else had a big dream, if they would share with me that they wanted to do something great with their lives, I was like the ultimate like encouraging friend. And I would even probably border on annoying because I was neglecting my own dream. I was like acting like and really believed that I wasn't the right person. But if all these things could be in place, like if I had enough money in my bank account, if I was a size 6 again, I mean, like if Mercury were in retrograde or whatever it was, I made everything an excuse to not do it. And then I'm a super type A person in some areas of my life. And in this area, the area called write your goals down for the year, I'm super type A. So on January 1st, I was writing my goals down for the year. And I realized like, I'm full of it. Like I keep writing this down. I keep saying I'm going to do this. And then I never do it. And so it was going to be the 17th time that make this movie was going to be on my list. And I realized that I was never going to do it. And I made a deal with myself that if I wrote it down one last time, that I better do everything that I possibly can do to make sure that it happens, or at least the ball gets rolling, right? Because I had no idea even how to start. And so January 1st, 7 years ago, I wrote it down on my list, and I had like literally every goal had like a sub list and all these action plans. And this part of my like whole list, had one thing, and it was to call my friend who told me that her next door neighbor made documentaries. That's the only play, that's the only thing I have. And that's what I did. I called him and then I pitched him the idea. And then I think it was 2 full years later, we got to work on the film.
Wow. So you're the cheerleader for everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's a common thing. Like we're so good at helping other people find their passions, and we cheer them on and we want them to succeed. But when it comes to us, all the gremlins and the saboteurs come in, and I think part of what helps is if we could treat ourselves like we would our best friend, our children, someone that we love, who we really believe in. And you did it. And so what I also really noticed when you were talking is that you started with one thing, like you got the ball rolling. And I think one of the things that holds us back from making our dreams come true is that we see all the steps. Like we think we know all the steps, or we don't know them, and it's too overwhelming to start. And so we get just flooded. So that was a really good thing that you did. Just one step, one thing.
Yes. And I guess what was good for me is that I didn't have, like, sometimes when someone's really good at something, they can see all the things and then, they're going to get overwhelmed, but I didn't know anything. All I knew was one thing. And so I was able to piece those things. And then after that, I was like, okay, well, how do I get this guy that I just pitched this film to take me seriously? So I better find someone to interview, And then, so I pitched the film to him in January. It wasn't until November that I got my first interview, and that was with Edward James Olmos. And, after that, he was like, okay, she's serious. But 11 months passed. And when I was still trying to figure out, what do I do? What's the next thing? And I was just trying to make progress, And so, but the thing that your listeners should know is that my commitment surpassed all of the details that I was going to have to do. Like, my commitment was way bigger than anything that I was going to have to confront. And I knew that I could rely on that. Like, if I just set my goal, like, okay, if it takes me the rest of my life, I'm going to do this. So I just kind of strapped myself in for this ride that I had no idea what was in store.
I like to say that when our why is bigger than our fear, then we can get stuff done, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it doesn't mean that I wasn't afraid. And it doesn't mean that at times I don't experience fear, because I feel like more than ever, I grapple with stuff that was so unknown to me. But it's interesting when you're on the other side, like before the 17 years, I knew what I had a knowing of, like the uncertainty, and I had a knowing of my self-doubt. It was like kind of like 101 level, right? Now I'm experiencing 500 level self-doubt. And at least I get to say to myself, you know what? I'd rather be here experiencing this level of self-doubt and experiencing these challenges and problems than the challenge and problem of only grappling with my inner dialogue, right? At least I'm grappling with, like, real things, real people, real life stuff. Like, I have like Tony Robbins says, like you want bigger problems. Like, don't have the same problem, have a bigger problem. And that's what I certainly have. And bigger successes too,
Yeah, with bigger problems comes bigger successes. And many of us just live in this little cozy little couch where we're in our little cave and it's all comfy, but we don't grow. And so you got to take those risks. And I love that you did. And for our audience who doesn't know what Project Enye is, tell us a little bit more about the backstory and what is this project?
Yeah, so it's a multimedia project. We kind of needed a name for the entire thing, because we always knew it was going to be more than a film. So the film is called Being Enye, and that's Enye. But Project Enye is the umbrella company that encompasses our podcast, our film, our upcoming film. We have an educational curriculum. We have a workbook that goes with our first film. I'll be writing a book this year about my journey. We have a cookbook coming out. So, like, it's kind of like the umbrella organization that kind of houses stories and material and media that have to do with what it's like to be first-gen American born. So, and Enye is someone who was born here in the United States, but whose parents are from a Spanish-speaking country. And Enye is spelled out phonetically, E-N-Y-E, but it's really the phonetic spelling of the extra letter in the Spanish alphabet, which is used in the word señora or piña. It's the N with a little squiggly line over it.
Wow. So that snowballed from a dream of a movie to an entire company.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting. A lot of people are afraid to choose a niche. and choose a direction because they feel it boxes them in. But what I'm hearing is this opened up a cookbook and a book and another movie and a tour and everything. So tell us, for anybody who's struggling with, what do I choose? What's my passion? Can you offer some insight into the beauty of finding the direction that you need to go in?
Yeah, so I am one of those types of people that believes that we're all here for a reason. We're all here to contribute something. And also that idea has been planted in our hearts and minds at a young age. And for me, it was planted at 26. And how I knew that was the thing is it just felt so true. Like there was nothing, I just never experienced anything so intense as the moment when I realized I'm supposed to help other people feel the way that I feel now, which was incredibly connected, and realizing that my whole life I'd spent feeling disconnected and alone. And then I had this moment where I felt connected and part of a community. And I just knew it was on me to make sure that other people knew that too. And the one thing that came through was a movie, even though I had no training, no experience or anything. So I will say during the 17 years that I experienced incredible self-doubt and that had my enoughness stuff, all, ups, downs, and all arounds. If someone asked me if time and money wasn't an issue, what would you be doing? I always knew what it was, but I negated it sometimes because I was like, but that's not possible. And so like my thinking brain, right, would poo-poo it because I couldn't see the end of the line, because I didn't think it was realistic, because I had no idea how it might happen, if it would happen. But my heart always knew the truth. And so when I got in touch with the heart knowing, right, the knowing of my heart, and which everybody has, I'm not special, like that's when I knew the truth. And it didn't matter that I didn't know how. The how was not up to me, just like what they say, but it actually is really true. And so I actually have a coaching program now where I help people pursue their big dream. And everyone kind of identifies that one thing. And they're like, well, I have no how I'm going to do it. But we don't worry about the how. We worry about what's going on in here, because this is what you got to fix. This doesn't need any fixing. This is what we spend 6 weeks fixing. And so I figured out how to just listen to this and how to let this guide me through all kinds of crazy situations and challenges, until now I kind of know, like my body, I know what my body feels like when I'm supposed to do something and when I'm not supposed to do something. And I really feel like everyone gets that gift. It's just exercising it to the extent to which I've exercised it. I've been able to use my my heart knowing, like I have facility with it, like nothing I've ever experienced before.
Can you share like an exercise or something that you do to tap into that heart knowing?
Yeah, so here's a perfect thing to do. And so like when I find myself like, yeah, I really like, here's a great example. I need to move. So I live with my family and my husband and my 2 kids in a loft in downtown Denver. And our landlords just told us we need to move because they need to sell the place. And so I was like, okay, aside from the upset, like now we're in the journey, so it was upsetting. Okay. But like I'm up leveling, life's happening, something new must be in store for me, something better. Right. And so now I'm like, what kind of place would I love to live in? And so I created the place. I wrote it all down. Right. And so that's kind of like the dream, the aspiration. And then there's like reality, like our budget, like convenience, where we need to live for our kids, for their schools and stuff like that. And so what I've been presented does not, it sort of looks like this. It sort of looks like this, but it's too much. It's too logical. Like, oh, like it fits our budget, but it's not in the best area, blah, 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 blah. So I'm kind of grappling with that. So here's what I do is I just put my hand on my heart, and I learned this from Tony Robbins, and I wait until I can hear my heartbeat. And then I take a deep breath. And then I just think of stuff that I'm grateful for. And I always think about my kids and think about how lucky I am to do what I get to do with my life, and my supportive husband, my business partner, the people that I get to touch. And I get in touch with the truth, which is the truth is that I can find the place that I know that's out there, that can happen, even though I've got a budget and I've got constraints on, geography, right? And that it's out there. And at times it can be very frustrating though, that we're looking at places and we're not finding it. But I just get back to there, and my heart believes, I tap into that truth that the perfect place is there, and I know that I'll find a perfect place.
I like that a lot. I deal with this in my other career as a dating coach, where a lot of women give up on love because they try so many things and it's not working, another failed relationship. And it's hard to keep that dream in mind, that goal in mind. But it is super important, because if you don't believe it and you stop going for it, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, what's the alternative? That I just give up and live in a cave? Or like you just give up and, like there's aspirations that we have with we're making a whole nother film, and I'm grappling with a lot of the same stuff again. And it's like, it never ends, but it's like, yeah, the core foundational thing is the belief that it exists.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Do you have a story, like a favorite story to share of some kind of transformation, or how you touched a life out there doing all this work? I'd love to hear.
Okay, here's a great story. So the film was completed 3 years ago, January. And we, films have like iterations. And so I think it was like version, let's just say 38 or something. And the version that's out there now for people to watch is like version 42. Let's just say that, okay? So we screened 38 in New York City to a bunch of influencers. And it was a private screening, first time it was ever going to be screened. And it was super cold in January in New York City. And I was walking down the sidewalk with my partner, my creative partner, Henry. And I was in the worst mood. And he was like, what is going on with you? And the reason why I was in the bad mood is because the very next night, the film was going to be screened and all these people were going to know the story of my life, which at times, I kind of arranged my adult professional life so that people wouldn't know some of the truth about my past, right? And so here I am, I'm like about to like share all this stuff about my life, because the movie is actually my life story. And I found myself really angry and lashing out at him. And then in the middle of the sidewalk, I'm like, you know what? You don't even know everything I sacrificed for this film. Like, you have no idea. And like, I'm totally projecting all this stuff onto him. And he's like what? Like, what have you sacrificed that I don't know? And I said, Kevin and I sold our wedding rings so we could pay rent like 2 years ago or whatever. And he's like, you sold your wedding rings? And that's the truth. I sold my wedding rings. At one point, I had kind of underestimated the amount of money that it would cost for me to solely work on this project without making any money. And we ran out of money. And 1 month we were like, wow, we have no money to pay the rent. So we actually sold our wedding rings to pay the rent that month. Now, he and I continued to talk. We went back to the house that we were staying at. We continued to talk, and I felt super vulnerable. And at one point, I remember standing up from the table and saying, you know what, like, now you actually know everything, because this guy and I have been making a movie about my life now for 2 years, and he knows a lot of stuff. And I felt, and at that point, if he knew about the rings, then he knew about everything. And I said, now you know everything, and now I'm powerless. So I gotta go. Like, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to my room. Like, I was so mad. I was so frustrated. I'm like, this is the biggest mistake, making a movie about my life. What the heck was I thinking? And now he knows about the ring, and I feel like a loser because I couldn't manage my money in such a way so that I could have my wedding rings, right? And he goes, hang on a second, Denise. Like, how, like me knowing everything and someone knowing everything about your life does not render you powerless. It's actually the source of your power to share your truth. You have it wrong. It's the opposite. And I stood there like, when you hear something for the first time and like, it's like, no, I'm right. Like, you're just like so wanting to be fixed. Like, no, you're still wrong. But it was like making so much sense to me. And like, things got rearranged in my head. And I was like, wow, like, what if that were true? What if it were true that my vulnerability is a source of my power, and that sharing my story with others and being totally transparent about my past could be, instead of something that would make me feel powerless and weak, something that would be my greatest strength. And so fast forward to the next night, it was a miraculous night. It was just something I'd never expected. And I'm very lucky to say that that night happened again and again and again and again. and the film was screened all over the country. I was personally at 103 screenings or 102 screenings outside of that. And what I learned is that that indeed is true. And we decided to actually add in the scene with my ring. And so when people see the film now, they learn about my ring. Even my mom found out about my ring because I realized, you know what, first of all, it's okay for people to know the truth. And then total sidebar, wedding rings do not a healthy marriage make. And so I actually have a joke that my marriage has never been stronger since we sold our rings.
Interesting. Right. And my marriage is over and I still have mine.
There you go. See?
I love that story because it is so true. I mean, Brene Brown has made vulnerability so palatable and famous, you know, and normalized really, because it is our greatest strength. It's not, we shouldn't be vulnerable with every single person we know and meet. And there is a point where truth is not to be shared, especially when it doesn't feel safe. But our stories are where we come from. You know, your whole purpose is to help people feel good in their skin, no matter where they come from, you know, and to normalize who they are. And so sharing your story is so important. And I love that you went through this process, but you were able to come around to the other side and see the power of your vulnerability.
Right. And, you know, it's interesting, like the more I shared, the less I felt, the less scared I felt. I was like, wow, you know what? Like if you know all my, and the thing is our second film has even more stuff. Oddly, our second film includes some stuff that I was reluctant to share in the first film. And then I saw the power of it. And it's not only the power of how it kind of delivered me, right? But how it delivered other people to a place of confidence about the truth about their lives. And like, yeah, I'm not saying to be indiscriminate or like, you know, being discriminating about who you share your story to is super important. And there is incredible power in being able to own it and be like, yeah, so what? Like not, you know, like that's it, that's me. And I have another joke and say like, it's incredible. Like if you ever get a chance, have a movie made about your life because you really know who your friends are, because my friends, like they stick around to the end and the other people walk away. And so when people see my film, either they love me or not. I'm not their type of person. It's a great sorter. But for someone who doesn't have a film made about their life, try just being totally honest about your life and your truth and who you are and how exactly you actually feel, which I know is a tall order. It's one thing to say, it's another thing to act, right? And it's something also that I continue to work on is like, how many layers do I really want to share, right? But the more layers I share, the more of an impact it makes on other people. And also when you have a strong message to share with others, when you deliver it on a platter of authenticity, people will eat the dish, to stay with the metaphor. But if they don't think that you're being real, it doesn't work, you know?
So true. I find that a lot of people, especially women who are type A, we try to be perfect. You know, we want to be seen as perfect. And I know in my own life, it held me back from my biggest self because I was so worried about what people would think that I couldn't allow my whole self to shine through. And it's in the telling of these stories that people find themselves. And, you know, and that's why it's so important, because I remember reading a book years ago. It was by an Indian author. I think it was called The Space Between Us, something like that. So it was a very famous novel. And it was based on her own life of growing up with different caste differences and having someone work for her. And she really thought she was talking to a very small audience of people who grew up in India who could relate. And I'm thinking that you probably can relate to this, because she had no idea of the impact of this story, because everyone could find themselves in the themes of her story, not the literal, I had to grow up in, you know, in your home and in your kind of culture to understand what it feels like to be an outsider or to feel a sense of superiority, and any of these themes that came through. And so I'm wondering how many people that you reached outside of your initial Enye influence. I mean, yeah, the people that you were trying to reach, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So here, that's super funny. So like, yeah, I agree. And I've read too, like the smaller your audience, the broader the appeal. So like the more you can zero in on the teeniest, tiniest niche, the more people are going to be able to identify with it. And I was like, that's fine. My intellectual mind agrees with it, but in real life with my film, like this is only for Enyes, and the secondary audience is just going to be Latinos. So like an immigrant or fifth gen, if they're not first, but it's only going to be Latinos. And my partner is, I was going to say he's a gringo. He's not Latino, and he loved the story, right? Because it transcends our ethnicity. It's really a relationship story. It's about self-love. It's about forgiveness, grace, authenticity. And so those themes really do transcend to other people. And one thing I found is super interesting is people from the Philippines. We have a following from the Philippines. The Latino diaspora actually goes beyond the United States. We have fans in Australia, people in Northern Europe, people that are children of people from Spanish-speaking countries that didn't move to the United States. They moved to other places. So that is interesting. One of the most interesting people that reached out to me is this woman who is from Sri Lanka, and she watched the film and she's like, that's my life. Like, take Spanish and trade it for this language and this and whatever. And now she lives in Saudi Arabia, and she and I communicate a lot. And she said, your movie and your project is my life. And so this even goes beyond just who in the United States can relate to it, which of course I call them frenyas, like people who love Enyes are frenyas. And so we even made a logo. It's an F with a squiggly line. And so those are like friends of the project, because everybody falls in love with the idea of the Enye and they want to be included. And it goes to a more global conversation. Like it touches on a more global conversation about inclusion and belonging and what is identity. And when there's so much global migration happening for all the reasons global migration happens, like, global warming, war, political unrest, people move and shift and change, locations, like, and they build families in these new places, and then they have children, and those kids feel a sense of wondering, who am I and where do I belong? And so really the project, my commitment, my big aspiration is to have an impact on the lives of those children. And I'm not really sure what that looks like right now, but I know that the work that I do in education is going to directly impact that. And so we're impacting kids in the United States now. And what I'm positive about is that what's possible is that a kid anywhere, born anywhere, whose parents didn't get to raise them in their home country, get to have a chance to kind of empower their child to embrace the identity of where they're from and also where they are right now.
Wow. I love the vision for the future, and it just keeps growing. It's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
And while you're talking, I'm thinking about your own children and how their lives have been impacted by Project Enye. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, so my kids are so like normal, and they don't know anything outside of this. Like the day that I pitched the film to my current partner right now, they were in preschool. And so they don't have any memory of their mom not being involved in the film and not being on tour and not, creating content around this topic. And so, so they're incredibly sensitive young women, and they have friends, and they're like, oh, mommy, I just, made friends with so-and-so, and she's an Enye, and her mom's from Colombia, or her mom's from whatever. So they attract Enyes as friends, even though they're children of an Enye, right? So my husband, I call him the gringo cowboy. He's from Oklahoma. He doesn't even know who the immigrant was in his family. They've been here for so long. And so they have a little bit of both. And they really embrace their Latinidad, because that's the part that needs, in my opinion, to be nurtured, like where they're from, learning the language, learning the culture, the food, and all that stuff. So they really embrace it, and they love. I have a thing with my daughters, like we were just listening to Despacito yesterday after breakfast, And I'm like, they're like, where's that? You know, where'd they shoot the video? I'm like, oh, they shot it here in Puerto Rico. And we were just talking about how many views it has, like 6 billion views on YouTube. And I'm like, remember, everything good comes from Puerto Rico. Second only to New York. So they embraced it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I was thinking the food, the culture, and the language and everything. And having grown up as an Orthodox Jew from parents who were, they were first generation Americans, both my parents, which was unusual in their generation. And it's interesting because as you're speaking, I'm thinking of my father who grew up in a Hasidic family that was all about following the letter of the law to a T. And a lot of his siblings, he had 6 siblings, and they all went in different directions. My mother grew up in a home in Litchfield County, Connecticut, which is farm country. Her father was a rabbi, but she had no education. So she grew up Orthodox, but in a very Christian world, and was made fun of for being a Jew. And so I grew up hearing these stories of my father's very strict upbringing, my mother's confusing upbringing. And I was put into a high school that was super Orthodox. We moved to Baltimore when I was going into 7th grade. And I just remember this feeling in my gut, like, this is not me. This is imposed upon me at a time when I valued freedom so much. And all of a sudden I'm being told what to wear, what to not do, a lot of not do's. And it's been a journey. And I think that for many of the people that I grew up with, just finding who you are, finding where you belong, if you leave the comfort of, even if maybe it's discomfort, but it still is the comfort of what you grew up with, but knowing that you're a thinking person and you want to find your way. And so for people like that who are leaving their culture to some degree, but still want to maintain some of it, do you have any advice for them?
So here's my advice. First of all, there's no right or wrong way. And I feel like a lot of times people feel like, oh, if I don't do it like this, if I'm not 100% fluent, or if I don't, read all the books or know all the history or know all the recipes and know all the stories, then I'm doing it wrong. And that's what makes like people all or nothing it, right? And when they do that, then they just chunk it out, because who has time to read all the books, know all the stories, get all the recipes, know all the dances, like it's impossible. So like what you know is good enough. And so I remember telling my husband, like, I always say I'm 85% fluent in Spanish, and that usually requires like 2 to 3 glasses of Pinot Grigio. And so like, how could I possibly like teach that to my kids? How could I possibly teach them to speak Spanish? And he's like, well, how about teaching them the 85% that you know? And that was like a revelation to me, like, oh, I guess I could do that. Like I could, like that could be good enough. And so, so that's what I started to do. And then I took my kids, and now like my one daughter just got into private school where they prioritize language. And so I'm actually actively putting her into a situation where I know she's going to learn the language and the culture, being in a school 6 hours a day or whatever. So then like, less formally, they already know how to cook some of the dishes. They love flan. We eat Puerto Rican food like that, rice and beans is one of their favorite things for me to cook, and they know how to do it already. And so I think you have to customize it, make it work for you, and like take the feeling, the bad feeling, because oftentimes it doesn't come with a good feeling. It comes usually with a bad feeling, like I'm not doing this right. And because I'm not doing it right, I'm going to ruin something, right? Or like taint something or make something messed up. And so that all has to go away. And the commitment has to be bigger than that. Like, no, I'm going to teach them what I do know, and I'm going to take them, to Puerto Rico, which we've taken my kids to Puerto Rico. We're going to take them back, like, and, just do your very best, which is kind of funny, but like that simple advice gets lost. But I'm not good enough, and like, but I'm not going to do it right. And somehow it's, like I'm just going to mess it up. Like the commitment to actually pass on what you know and learn a little bit and give that and like create your own version of it, and let that be okay. Like forgive yourself. For self-forgiveness is an incredibly big theme with this project, and having grace with others, but also with ourselves, being the product of parents from a different country and trying to have that influence, like trying to figure that out, like how to reconcile that is like putting a puzzle together that has 1,000 pieces and you don't necessarily get the picture on the freaking box. You're like, where do I put this? How does this even all fit together? But you're the one putting it together. So you fit it together the way you think it should go. That's my advice.
I love it. You're talking about self-forgiveness, and the whole time you're talking, I'm thinking self-compassion. Oh. And it's the same basic thing. And it's the theme of everything that we're talking about. It's the self-forgiveness and self-compassion for selling your rings, for owning your story, for finding your way in this big puzzle that you don't have the picture for. That's a great metaphor. And I think we all have to find our way and own it, and not feel guilty about it. Mm-hmm. So much of what I teach is knowing your values, knowing your boundaries, knowing how to speak up and not hide your truth. It's showing up as our full selves. And that to me is the definition of a woman of value. And this is really what I love. And this is why I stepped into this space for myself and took an 11-year career and said, okay, now I'll start over again. And I have no idea how to do it, but I'm starting. And
that's awesome.
That's how we do.
People that find a lot of success, it's funny, like if you pay attention to people that find a lot of success, oftentimes they're the ones that had no idea. And what's cool is like we can innovate, we can borrow from different skill sets that we have, different experiences that we've had. To make something, like to create something instead of by the rule book, we create it by our own book, and it ends up being great and fresh and whatever else people describe those people are.
Yeah. I'm doing these interviews, I pick up on similar themes in everybody's stories because these women have all found their truth in some way. They have followed faith. They have taken a leap. And you can't have all the pieces. You just can't. You have to have passion. You have to have a sense of purpose of why you're doing it. But you also have to really just let it be, and let it unfold and not have to look a certain way. I mean, it took you 2 years to get this thing done, that's a long time. For a lot of people, the lack of immediacy and success that happens within a short period of time makes them choose the safer road and stuck with it. And that perseverance is a huge part of your success.
Thank you. And it was 2 years before we could get started, and then another 2 years to make the film. So it was 4 years from the time I said, that's it, I'm doing this, right? And here's the joke though, that time would have passed anyway, right? And either I would have had the results or not. It's very binary. Like it's either a 0 or a 1, you choose. And I know that's oversimplifying it, but in a way it's like the oversimplification makes it like, yeah, okay, so like, why not? Why not? Like, what do I have to lose? The only thing is just the time. And nobody gets to know how much time they have.
Exactly.
So, right?
Yeah. No, I just did a video about the 5 regrets of the dying. I mean, you don't want to get to the end of your life with regrets. You want to make the best use of the time you have. And we have no idea what that looks like, but we can control. And what I hear you keep saying is we get to create it. We get to take those steps and create what we want. And so many people feel powerless and like victims of their lives. And my passion and yours too is to give people this message that we can create. We have power.
Right. And the thing is, it's never outside of us. It's never, and that's the part that's so insidious. It's like, it's never the thing that you think it is. Like there's a gal in my coaching program right now, and she joined my coaching program because she wanted to create a space for people to go and take workshops and do poetry slams, for kids to go and do crafts. But really the entire thing is around supporting writers, like adult and youth writers and creative writing. That's her jam. She loves that, right? So she joins the coaching program because she wants support in creating this physical space. But we reduce it down to, let's just do one workshop So then we can like kind of get a proof of concept, see if people are interested, see if like this is a real viable idea, blah, 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 blah. So now she's like, this is the second cohort. She's in it again. And she had a huge breakthrough. Like mother-daughter is a huge theme in our work as well. And I'm sure in yours too, right? And so she wanted to go back to Guatemala. Like that was like her thing. She wanted to go back there and she wants to write about Guatemala, about this part of herself that she hasn't yet realized. Okay. But she hasn't been able to go back. Maybe she's gone back once, but she wants to go back and like really absorb it, sight, sounds, taste, everything. But she wasn't going because she felt like she needed her mother's blessing. And without the blessing, she couldn't go. And so it's like, wow, so you're saying like you won't do this whole thing because of this blessing that you're thinking that your mom's not going to give you, or there all this evidence that she hasn't given you. And I was thinking, man, you know what? I feel like that's why she joined this program to begin with, so she could go to Guatemala. It wasn't necessarily about the space. It was about her being able to release this cord, like cut the cord, like Latinas. And I bet you the same thing in Jewish culture too. Like we will never cut the cord with our parents. Like, you know, like my non-Latino friends, they're cutting the cord at 18. But if you're, you know, like you know what I'm saying? Like I'm in my 40s. I feel like I recently cut the cord with my mom, you know? And so that's very typical. And so like, she just cut the cord. Like she made a decision during that call, I'm going. Then, you know what? Her mom texted her did a Voxer and said, you know, why don't we go to Guatemala together? It was the weirdest thing. It was her mom's idea. And so like these two things kind of happened at once. Like she released herself from this energetic thing that she had with her mom. And then what a shocker, her mom comes to her with this brilliant idea to go to Guatemala. But now she gets to stand in her truth. Like what you were saying, like listening to yourself. Like, what about if all of this was just about having integrity? Like being your word to yourself. Like, I want to do this no matter what. And it's not like no matter who I hurt, but it's like, no matter what, like I need to get this done. And I need to sort out the relationships outside of this dream so that I can still live this dream. And what about if it were just a matter of keeping our word to ourselves? And that once we did, the relationships that need to work out. You know, like her mom's relationship has worked out. She's okay now, right? She's got the blessing, but it's like she had to be willing to lose it. And so I think what you're talking about is, yeah, we have it in common. And like that's that integrity. You're keeping your word with yourself about what you want to do with your life is extraordinarily, well, it's important to us as women, but it's also important to the world. You know, like our own evolution, who we decide to become and what we decide to contribute. We have no idea what's lost when we give up on that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, this is what I live for, is to just, I mean, you know, to have the courage to do that when we're living our truth, when we are not afraid to speak up for what's important to us. We do have to let go of, I might hurt that person. I have this conversation with my children all the time because, you know, I have a boundary I want to set, but I don't want to hurt people. And you have to be able to let go of the guilt of saying yes to yourself, because if you hurt somebody, they're not the right people for you. You know, they're boundary pushers. They're the people who push back and push against your boundary they're not honoring you. They're not respecting you. And that's good information for us to have. Mm-hmm. So we need to first respect ourselves. And I noticed in my own life, like after my divorce, my kids, because I started that process for myself. And my biggest fear in divorce was, what's it going to do to the kids? I mean, I think most people go through that. Mm-hmm. And because I was honoring my truth, they started to respect me more. And I was, you know, just, there were boundaries, there were expectations, there were responsibilities that I could not enforce when I was married. And they began to see that I wasn't just living to, you know, go run errands for them, that I actually had a life, and that I was modeling for them what I wanted them to do with their lives. And we have now created such an amazing relationship because of it. They know they can count on me for the truth. They know that I'm not going to lie to them when they ask me for their opinion and for my opinion. So I think it's just super important to live our truth, to live out loud, to go find the biggest space that we can fill and not suppress ourselves. And women do this more than men, I think, to shrink to make other people shine. And we need to shine. And our shining makes other people shine. You know, it's really contagious.
Yes. Yeah. And like that reminds me of like a conversation of like finding out who your people are, you know, like who's your tribe. I have this thing that I say, like, hang out with people, only hang out with people that think that you are as great as you think they are. So if we just do that, then we're like hanging out with the right people. But if like someone gets mad or get their feelings hurt and they're super high maintenance about something, like, no, like go find somebody else to bug. Right? Like, I just want to hang out with people that inspire me and that feel inspired by me, you know? That's it.
Totally. All right, Denise, it is time for the lightning round. Are you ready for some quick questions?
I'm ready. Let's
All
bring
right. All right. So fill in the blank. And this one is really just for you. I never thought I was blank enough.
I never thought I was good enough.
What was the number one thing holding you back from becoming a woman of value?
Believing the lies in my head versus listening to the truth in my heart.
What is something you failed at that taught you an important life lesson?
I failed at listening to my heart for 17 years, and it taught me that it costs me everything to ignore that truth.
That was a big life lesson. No more. What is the best advice you can give to a woman who has given up her value in the past and wants to step into her value?
So my advice would be, I'm going to give a few pieces of advice. First of all, like, think of 3 amazing friends that you feel 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Like, boom, think of them. 1, 2, 3. Write them down. Hang out with those people and people like them. So, 1. Go get your hair done. Go buy a new outfit for yourself. Go redo something. Go like invest in yourself. Do something. Go to a seminar. Go on vacation. Do something for you. Put yourself first, but invest. Like, put some money down on you, and then see what that feels like. Because the only way to be a woman of value is to value yourself, and that's too conceptual. So, like, spend hard-earned, hard cash on yourself and start on what makes you feel beautiful and what makes you feel like your space is beautiful, so it's inspiring. And then start by investing yourself, by joining a program, doing a seminar, hiring a coach, someone like you who's going to help them find the man of their dreams. Like, you're not going to just find it by saying, oh, I'm a woman of value now. No, you need someone like you, that's like Sandy, that's going to say, no, like, you need to look at this a different way. You know, like, you need guides. If you don't believe that you're a woman of value, then you need to get in front of professional people that see it. And then also people like friends that see it too.
Yeah, the friend piece keeps coming up. And I think we do surround ourselves by people who influence us and who inspire us when we start stepping into our value. And I definitely see this both in my own life and where after my divorce, and I kind of feel like I was reborn after the divorce because I had suppressed so much of myself for so long. And looking at my friendships, really assessing, like, where have I played small? Where have I tolerated? And I see it in my clients. The people who come to me often are letting people abuse them in all parts of their lives, their children, their parents. You know, it's about starting to set those boundaries and start bringing those people into your life, because it radiates out. It's amazing what happens when you're inspired all the time, you know, and I feel like I have that now, and it sounds like you have that now, and it's so important. And not to feel we have to do this journey in life alone. And I have heard you say, thank you for the pitch for the coaching, and now in my new business as the Woman of Value business, I'm helping women in business to stand in their truth and their power and step into the work that they are meant to do to ask for raises, to get the respect and rewards they deserve. And I think we often, as women, think we have to do everything alone. It's, we got to be tough, we got to be strong. And you've spoken about all your support, so many people in your life who have supported you. So I love that you bring up the support piece, because to me, it's like highlight, put an asterisk next to that.
Yes. Yeah, actually, so every time I screen my film, I always wait until all the credits roll. And the first thing I say is, I did not do this by myself. Like there's all those people, then there's my husband and my kids and all like my own like friend support system. And I think there's a lie perpetuated in the media that there's like the woman, like the woman that we should aspire to is the one that looks great, like size 2, I don't know what, cooking for a family, making like 6 figures a month, I don't know what. And like and she's got it all together. That's not, and then it's perpetuated by other women that aren't telling the truth about their lives, that they get help, that they feel like it's not a journey. And I'll just say, like, to me, it's a journey. It's not like I have not, I'm on a journey right now of like a extreme self-care journey. Like I'm on a 90-day like workout and eating plan to kind of get my body to the physical place that I want it to be. And so, like it never ends, but at least but the bottom line is I'm prioritizing me, and I'm always figuring out where can I give more to myself, because I want to be the best wife and the best mom and the best version of me as possible. But I've got to be important to myself first, which also means too that I'm just not available sometimes to hang out with a lot of people, right? And then some people, I'm all about being available to them, and like asking for help and helping others is a huge piece of it. Like if we're not in that giving, receiving mode, then we don't get as much as we deserve. We've got to be giving. I heard it yesterday, like there was something called like, I forget what it's called, but anyway, you give 50% to get 50%. But if you give 80%, you're only going to get 20%. So like giving is 100% model, if we look at it like that. And so, so for people that are giving too much because they can't be good receivers, tisk. We have to stop and allow people to give to us as well, and that means friendships, getting the support, and like picking the fruit from trees that we've been nurturing for a really long time,
Love it. So true. And I went to hear Fran Hauser, who wrote the book, The Myth of the Nice Girl.
Oh, that sounds like a great book.
Great speaker. I can't wait to read the book, actually. She was talking about how there's this myth that nice girls finish last, and nice girls don't get the corner office, and nice girls, you have to be bitchy to get higher up. And she talked about how she really advocates for women to be kind and boundaried, so it's the boundary thing again, and to be firm, but also to be kind. And I totally agree with that. And she talked about a quadrant that she creates with four parts of whatever you put in there is the things, those are the things that you honor in your life. And so when you talked about your time and saying no to things, so you put in there, yourself, your husband, your kids, your project, whatever it is. And you then prioritize certain things in each quadrant. So maybe with your kids, it's spending quality time each week doing homework with them. For yourself, it's the 90-day plan, whatever it is. But if you're not honoring those 4 things, you're living out of alignment. And so we have to guard those things that are the most important and narrow it down, because we tend to put too much on our plate and then we're exhausted. And I grew up with the exhausted model of overgiving, of being a martyr, of being a victim, and it's just, you don't get, when you give that way, you don't get anything back really in return. It's exhausting.
Yeah. And then you get to be resentful.
Yes.
And then people like, unfortunately my mom's a lot like this, and it's like, oh, I don't, like, I'm so averse to anyone in my life that are the overgivers. Like, I don't like that because I always feel like I owe them something. Isn't that funny? Like you create that environment of feeling like you owe, or someone owes you something, versus just unconditional giving,
Yeah, and when you're giving from depletion, it doesn't feel good to receive it either. You know, when
Mhm.
I'm so tired and here you go. I'm like, don't give it to me. I don't want it.
That is so funny. That's so funny. I love it.
All right, so Denise, a few more questions.
Yeah.
Any books that you can recommend that have helped you along the way?
So I have so many books. I read about a book a week, and like Audible is my friend, and so I listen to everything. And so I'm trying to think like what there was a book by Gay Hendricks that I read that blew my mind away. And I'm reading something called Atomic Habits right now, but which is also very good. But I want to share this book by Gay Hendricks because that one was just incredible, and I read that at the beginning of the year. Oh yeah, okay, The Divine Matrix: Bridging Time, Space, Miracles, and Belief.
Hmm.
Oh sorry, no, that's not the right. It's not by Gay Hendricks. It's by Greg Braden.
How do you
So
spell the last name?
um it's like putting a little thing over the last name, but I think it's Bradon, I
Okay.
think. Greg Braden, and it's called The Divine Matrix: Bridging Time, Space, Miracles, and Belief. And that book totally blew my mind away.
What did you love about it?
Just like about what's real, and like also about about just like what's real. I'm kind of collapsing another book I recently read, just like what's real. And also there's so much science behind everything that we just talked about. Like if we stopped to cite every study that proves what we're saying is true, and it's not your opinion or my opinion, it's like it's actually true. Like there's science-backed research that say the things that we've discussed are true. That it was a mind blower, and that we really are the creators. Like it's really us. And so like bridging time, space, and belief, like that belief that we started this conversation off with, that's all up to us. And so yeah, so it was just that there was so much science behind all of these things that I'm kind of pulled towards. So it solidified to me that it indeed is true. It's not just what's resonating with me personally, you know?
Yeah. Now my brain likes science too. I like the left and right. You know, I'm an artist, I paint, and I also was always super responsible. So I always had that. I need both.
Uh,
Well, I'm going to check that out. That looks really interesting. What is your favorite woman of value quote?
oh my gosh. So I have them all in my Instagram. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's Project Enye. And I was in a quote phase on Instagram, and I love anything by Rumi. Like Rumi is my bully. And but let me see here. Oh, you know what? Here's one, and this is not by Rumi. This is it was by Khalil Gibran. That book, The Prophet, and it's really it's a chapter in that book, and it's about love and joy and pain. And so I don't know what the exact quote is, but it was what he said about to the ability to which you can experience pain is the ability to which you can experience joy. And so those of you who are listening who have had to struggle with deep, dark stuff, like there is a silver lining. Like those of us who have had to deal with great pain in life, we also are the greatest appreciators of life because we know, like, good. It's like you don't really know what sweet tastes like until you taste salty. Like those of us who have tasted salty know how sweet can be, and that there's a gift, and that if we can take that pain and create something to give to the world, in a way that can fill up the pain, in a way that can interact with the sadness, and it makes me emotional because in a way I feel like I've done that. Um, it can heal too by using that pain as a gift, you know?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think that it also it speaks to living fully. It's again not living in that space of what feels comfortable or safe, because then we're not really feeling. We're playing it safe. So the beauty is when you can feel the emotions fully, and not only heal, but then bring that healing to other people. I think that is one of the greatest gifts, and it's what you're doing in the world today, which is such a beautiful thing.
Thank you. Thanks
So
so
Denise,
much.
our final question, and this kind of speaks to what we just were talking about, and how would you like to be remembered?
Oh my gosh. So I'd love to be remembered as someone that wanted to heal the identity, uh, to heal that which makes us feel like we're not connected. I'd love to be one of the faces that people say, wow, she really did some groundbreaking work in how people can go from disconnected to connected in a moment. You know, to me, contributing to the conversation of belonging is the most worthwhile job that I could ever have on this planet. And so I'd love to do that. And that makes me really emotional too, right?
A beautiful message. And yeah, and you're doing such great work. How can our listeners get in touch with you, Denise?
Yeah, so the best way to connect with me is on IG. And so you can just go to the Instagram of Project Enye, and it's Project ENYE. And there's a little E there, symbol, and a circle with a squiggly line above it. And that's me. As soon as you click on it, you'll see 101 pictures of me and my favorite quotes. Lots of them are Rumi's. And yeah, you can DM me if you have any questions there, find out about any of our stuff. If you'd like to see the film, you can watch it for free by going to enyethemovie.com. And so it's ENYE, themovie.com. And you can watch it for free on your laptop. It's a 37-minute film.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Denise, for coming on today, for inspiring our audience to step into their value, to know what it is, to not push their dreams off forever, but to actually make them come true. You don't need all the pieces. You just need to get started and look at the amazing things that you're doing in this world. I am so inspired by you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great to connect with you. I really appreciate the invitation to be on your show. And I'm so excited for what you're doing for other women. I just think it's awesome.
If you would like to step more fully into your value, grab a free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Woman of Value on my website, thewomanofvalue.com. Just click the link at the top of the homepage. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to click the subscribe button in your listening app. And if there's something in this episode that inspired you, please share it with others, because the more we share these inspirational stories, the more women of value we will have in this world. I'll see you next time.